Hello. All right, let's get busy. I have had a bit of a breakthrough today in my understanding of something. I was doing some research to prepare for this episode, and I came across, I was listening to some source material, which I'll play, and I understood something a little bit better than I hadn't before. So, let's begin. Oh, God. I always get little itches and stuff when you start recording. It's crazy. All right. So, we left off in episode 1, part 1. David Koresh, Vernon Howell, has just begun his message in the fall of 1983. So, what does that mean? So, I think I mentioned it was, he called it the 10 days prior to the atonement. And it's actually, technically, it's 9 days prior to the atonement. The 10th day would be the atonement. And as I've mentioned in other videos about centuries, sometimes Vernon had trouble counting. But whatever, that's not really too important. Anyway, 10 days prior to the atonement's on the 10th day. This was his introductory message that Lois Roden had allowed him to teach as the beginning of his seventh angel's message. Okay. All right, so let's flash forward 6 months, and I want to describe to you a scene. And I was there. So this is firsthand eyewitness testimony. We were having a meeting in a house at New Mount Carmel. New Mount Carmel was originally a row of houses all up and down the road there. Maybe some of you have been there. I don't know. Now there's a chapel. There's some new structures there. But originally there was, as you came down the road, which is kind of an S shape, you'd come down straight in from the entrance and go back. The first thing you'd pass is a church. You'd then go straight back, like kind of straight, and you would come upon the Roden's house, and then you'd kind of turn left, and you'd go past the administration building. Now, the administration building became the site of that very large structure that existed during the siege. And then later, now I think it's the chapel is there. And then you would continue on past the administration building, and then it would just be a long row of houses on the right side of the road as you traveled down. And we would have meetings in some of these houses. So one of the larger houses, when I say large, they're still small, but one of the larger houses, we were having a meeting with, as Vernon Howell leading the meeting and giving his studies during Passover 84. This was a big Passover season where many members had been invited to come down and analyze and decide whether they were going to follow Vernon Howell's message, the seventh angel's message. And in this particular meeting that I'm describing, I was there, my family was there, other individuals were there, Lois Roden was there, some Branch Davidians who had come from, various places around the country to do this thing and evaluate the message were there. Okay, I don't remember what the study was about. It was taped, but I don't have the tapes. I don't know. And at one point in the study, Lois Roden got up, and she felt that she needed to give testimony. And she felt that she needed to give testimony about what turned out to be a description of a clear statement about the sexual relationship between her and Vernon Howell. So she stood up and spoke in a clear voice and clearly explained in very clear, precise terms that her and Vernon, who is sitting right next to her, actually he starts to shake his head and, oh, Sister Roden, oh, Lois, please, no. Um, what are you doing? And he might have even put his hands in his head in his hands at one point, his face. And she just laid it out very clear. This is what happened. He came to me. We had sexual intercourse. I don't know if she would use that phraseology, but it was clear that that's what she was saying, that we did this. And she described, not in graphic terms, but just to be clear. So we're all adults in the room here mostly. There are some children there, I suppose. But to understand, this is precisely what happened. And then she said the reasoning that she gave behind this was to say, well, you said the Emmanuels will know the truth, and he had said that. That's from the Bible, Emmanuels. It's from Isaiah 7. We'll get into that. You said the Emmanuels will know the truth, and so that's why I'm telling this, because I feel we need to know the truth. And she finished. Some people in the room were visibly shaken. I remember one woman, I think her hands were shaking because she was working a tape recorder. And she was like, I don't know if she stopped her tape recorder at this point. Maybe she didn't want to. I don't remember exactly what happened in the room. And I myself was surprised. I was like, oh, I hadn't completely understood that before. Okay. So what's going on here? Well, let's find out. Okay, so there was an individual who was a Branch Davidian member back in the day. He had come in the 70s. His name was Doug Mitchell, and he passed away a number of years ago. He was still alive at the time of the ATF raid and FBI siege. And he wrote a document. Let me look over here and quote you the title. The Warfare of Vernon Howell, a.k.a. David Koresh, and others against the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. So this is his particular viewpoints as someone who is claiming to be one of the people who would have a message, following Lois Roden. And I'm not going to read very much from it, but there's one thing that he says here that I read, years ago, which I want to quote to you, that is very, very true. And he's talking about, to get some context, he's talking about this period of time that I was speaking of, concerning Vernon trying to influence Lois Roden. Hey, please let me teach my message. And then he was allowed to teach a message, and then there were things that happened afterwards. Obviously, Lois and him were having a relationship. And remember, I flashed forward 6 months, okay, from that point. So there's a 6-month span of time between the first thing I said about he started his message and then the confession of Lois Roden. It's a 6-month span of time. And so during this span of time, this individual, Doug Mitchell, who I knew personally, and we might talk more about him in the future. He said about this period of time, everything that Vernon was doing had a cloak of darkness about it. Yes, that is a good description of what I would call Vernon's modus operandi. Yes, very mysterious. Very mysterious. There was one person who told me, they were with him one time. This was before this would be back in the early 80s. He'd disappear. Where did you go? When he would come back, he'd be gone for several hours, just like randomly. And where did you go? Where you been? Oh, I've been about my Father's business. Quoting Luke, I think. About Jesus. That's something that Jesus said. So yeah, whoa, a very mysterious, responses to things, kind of liked to speak in riddles sometimes. Yeah, he liked to be mysterious. Kind of, it was fun for him, I guess, or just the way he wanted people, whatever, the way he was. And this was true concerning this affair that he had had with Lois Roden. That's why I described that it was a surprise to me. I had heard things about it, but it wasn't really clear to me that that's exactly what had happened. I mean, sometimes when Vernon would be referring to the thing that I described, the confession of the relationship, Vernon would just simply say, Isaiah 8. Yeah. Isaiah 8. He would whisper it. Isaiah 8, Okay, so Isaiah 8. Well, that really is the core of this whole thing right now. So let's read Isaiah 8. I'm sorry, I forgot to prepare for this, but I can get to it really quick here. Okay, so we're going to go to Isaiah 8. So Isaiah 8 is about something that Isaiah does, which seems to be a bit radical when you read it. But we'll work through it. I am not going to read from the KJV. Let's do NIV. Okay. The Lord said to me, take a large scroll and write on it with an ordinary pen, Meir Shalal Hashbaz. So I called in Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah as reliable witnesses for me. Then I made love to the prophetess, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said to me, name him Meir Shalal Hashbaz. That's a mouthful. Meir Shalal Hashbaz. And there's more here, but what comes after this is really not important for the purposes of our study here. So yeah, so that's the text of Isaiah 8, the part that David Koresh would be referring to when he mentioned Isaiah 8. Well, what's going on with Isaiah 8? Well, now I need to play a clip. I'm going to play a couple of clips. I'll put the text up here somewhere so you can read along, and I'm going to be quiet here for a little bit so that you can follow along in the
and we're told in the scriptures to test the spirits. I just want to make sure that you agree that you are to test the spirits. If a voice or something talks to you, or you have a dream or a vision, that you ask God to reveal to you if this is from him or if
what if the voice says, sure it's from me, dummy, who do you think it's from?
Well, he doesn't speak that way.
Well, if the voice could
you don't test the spirits by what it says to you, you test the spirits by the word of God.
Okay, now Isaiah, let's get down to Isaiah chapter 8 real clearly now.
Okay. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So that's from a study that he was giving some people in South Carolina in 1987. Okay. And as you can tell, there's a bit of some arguments there going on. There's a woman there. Her name is Lori, as you can see in my transcript there. And there's some discussion about inspiration and voices and all that. But then you notice at the end, so let's get down to, what does he say exactly? Let's get down to Isaiah 8 really clearly now, right? Let's get down to Isaiah 8 really clearly now. So what is he talking about, right? Yeah, let's get down to Isaiah chapter 8 really clearly now. Well, that's weird. You would think that's where I stop, okay? And you're like, well, David, play the rest of the part where he tells about Isaiah 8. No, he doesn't go on to talk about Isaiah 8. That's the thing, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. I don't have a record of him giving a clear description of what he means by Isaiah. But that's okay. I'll explain it to you. I remember enough now, and then I remembered something else this morning. So yeah, we're going to learn. But as you can see here, this is a response to what's going on when he's dealing with I'm pointing from the screen over here. Sorry. When he's dealing with this situation where they're talking, what's going on here is he's trying to, there people in the room are trying to understand, when you hear this voice that you're talking about, how do you know it's God and all this stuff? And he's, and his response is really ultimately, well, Isaiah 8, okay? Let's get down to Isaiah 8 really clearly now. But then he doesn't explain what Isaiah 8 is. This is more, it's kind of let's just say that it's a coping mechanism. That's one of the insights I had this morning. Isaiah 8, for Vernon and his understanding of Isaiah 8 that he developed, which we will go into in some detail because we have to. It's the only way you can understand this, is a coping mechanism. It is not only that, is a defense mechanism, which of course could be a coping mechanism. A coping mechanism is you're defending yourself against the intrusion of essentially a harsh reality, right? There's some very uncomfortable thing out there in life that you're avoiding, and a coping mechanism is a thing that you come up with to deal, okay? And I'm not necessarily saying they're all bad. I'm just saying that's what they are. Some of them could be rather harmless. Others might be, depending on what they are, right? So anyway, all right. Now let's, okay, so to learn a little bit more, let's play the next clip, okay? Okay, here we go.
There are those who have walked with us in the flesh. They have not been children of light. They say they have seen. But now you see, they have seen nothing. We now realize more clearly the testimony of Uriah and the testimony of Zechariah the son of Berechiah. Two stories of truth, two different meanings. One thing witnessed, two different forms of light. One light is darkness, one light is light. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So we know a little bit more now, right? Okay. Now, this particular presentation is a couple of years later, and this is after the new light. And I would say this is pretty much where the place where, and he's David Koresh pretty much at this point. This is David Koresh. Okay, he's transformed himself into David Koresh. That's his theological name. Also for entertainment purposes, by the way, to be fair. I want to be fair about that. He wasn't just that he said that he changed his name to David Koresh because it's a Bible name, which it is, but he also changed his name to David Koresh for entertainment purposes, and that's what's on the actual paperwork. That's fair. Lots of people change their names. Okay, so he's David Koresh now. And this is his, so he's talking about, well, he says, when he says, though, there are those who have walked with us in the flesh, well, he's talking about me. Okay. You can listen to my, if you're new to this channel or you haven't listened, I have presentations on, I'm sorry, I need to look at the camera more. I have presentations on my getting the cult out of my brain. There's a couple of studies videos I did on that. There's also how David Koresh tried to destroy my marriage. There's that. So you can go back and listen to that stuff. But he's talking about me, those who have walked with us in the flesh. And also Mark Bro and other individuals who were in opposition to him. Okay. Now, when he says they have not been children of light, right? Earlier in the study, he's talking about, it's this Platonic idea. He didn't know anything about Plato or his philosophy, but that's essentially what he's talking about. Obviously, you have things that you see, right, in the physical light, right? But then there's the spiritual eyesight in your mind. We all know what that is. Like you see something literally, but then you have a spiritual understanding in your mind. Okay, so the two different kinds of sight. So when he says he sees, and we remember we read this, the testimony of Uriah, right, and the testimony of Zechariah the son of Berechiah. Okay, so those were the reliable witnesses that were brought in to record. When Isaiah went to the prophetess and she conceived. Well, in the King James it says the prophetess, and I think it says that in the NIV too. Anyway, so Lois Roden is the prophetess. Okay, obviously, and so now this is conjecture on my part, because I don't remember him ever saying this, but it makes sense. Apparently, at some point after what I described, the beginning of his message in September of 1983, Vernon Howell approached Lois Roden with a message, and maybe he told her about a voice saying, God is, I've been told we need to fulfill Isaiah 8, right? Go to the prophetess and she conceives. She was told that she was going to have a child. Now, the day that she gave her testimony, I don't remember her mentioning that. She might have. It's a long time ago, but that didn't register with me. So she was told that she was going to have a child, which is what the text says, right? His name shall be Meher Shalal Hashbaz. I don't know if they really were going to name the child that. Okay. So let's tell another story. So at some point, a few months later, now the dates are fuzzy here. Okay, I'm not sure when this would be in the 6-month span of time, though I'm assuming it would be even before he married Rachel. Because he married Rachel, let's say he married Rachel September, October, November, December. Let's say about 4 months later, after he started his message, he married Rachel. Okay? So, at some point in there, there is another eyewitness account. I was not there. My wife was not there, but my mother-in-law was there. And then also, I think little Michelle Jones was there too. She's passed away, of course, so I can't ask her, but I remember her talking about it once. But anyway, Lois Roden had taken a pregnancy test. Okay? And she had gotten a positive result. Okay. Now, and she came into a meeting where Branch Davidians are seated around, are listening to, this probably would have been in Lois Roden's house, by the way, because, see, the administration building had burned down, right, where the printing had occurred. I mentioned that earlier. And so meetings were being held in the Roden's house because they had the biggest house on the property. They had a fairly large living room area where you could have a class. It's big enough to have a classroom setting for a Bible study. And my wife recently confirmed this to me because she obviously lived there. So she told me, yeah, we would go to Lois Roden's house and have meetings. And my wife was sick this day. She wasn't there. But her, like I said, my mother-in-law was there. Her mother was there. And Lois Roden bursts into the room waving this pregnancy test around. I'm pregnant, agitated, upset. I don't know much about this, but that's essentially it, that did happen. Hey, she took the facts of the matter are she took a pregnancy test, got a positive result, and was waving it around everyone. Look, I'm pregnant. Trying to maybe verify that she actually was telling the truth. Okay. Now, unfortunately, in this book here, there's another mistake. When this book discusses this particular topic, it does what's called an anachronism. Pretty sure that's what the phrase is. So, for example, what's an anachronism? In Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar, there's a scene where a clock chimes, whatever, a certain hour, ding, ding. Well, that's called an anachronism. They didn't have chiming clocks in Roman times. Okay. Well, in this book, the author describes the pregnancy test as a modern type of test that you take where there's strips that indicate positive or negative, right? We all know what those are. We've seen those. No, they didn't have those kinds of pregnancy tests in 1983. Okay? And the reason I know that is because I myself and my wife in 1986 purchased a pregnancy test circa 1986 and performed the test. Okay, so how did they work? Now, I'm a technically minded person, so I got out the instructions and read them quite thoroughly. They were complex and very specific. Okay, that's why taking a pregnancy test back in this time was actually rather a tricky matter. What it was, and some of you may even remember this. If anybody remembers this, please comment. Okay, to make sure that I'm not crazy. The test would come with a little tube, okay, basically like a little test tube, right? And I think there was either some prepared material in the tube, probably, and it was sealed. And it came with some very specific instructions and pictures to show what would be the results, what it would look like if you were to get a positive or a negative. And then it came with a little stand, and you would put the tube in the stand. There was a mirror at the bottom, and so that you could easily see, because the test results would appear at the very base of the tube, right, in a little pattern, like a ring pattern, I think. Maybe I could have done some internet research here, but but this is what I remember. And so you would put the tube when you were finished preparing the test, right? According to the instructions, you would place the tube into the stand, and then you could see in the mirror, you could see the test results. And then you wait a specified amount of time. And it wasn't quick. It was like an hour, I think. Anyway, me and my wife, we thought she might be pregnant around, I don't know, this was fall of 1985. And we purchased this test, and we did follow the instructions. I'm literate. I can read and follow instructions, right? It's not hard. You just have to be patient. Okay, this is what we do. We did the test per the instructions. We set the test up on a countertop in my in-laws owned a converted bus, which was like an RV. And me and my wife were staying in this RV at the time. And we put the test on the countertop, and then we're tiptoeing around the RV very carefully, because it's shaky, because you're not supposed to disturb this thing, okay? And I remember the instructions specifically said that if you don't do the test properly, you can get a false positive. You can get a false positive on this thing. It's not hard to get. You have to be very careful. And sure enough, we're very quiet. We don't touch the test. And then, at the right amount of time, we look in the mirror and woohoo, we're pregnant. Great, right? Okay. Flash forward a number of years, not too many years, 87. The reason I'm sighing is because it's about my wife's sister. It doesn't take it's not going to take a stretch of the imagination. My wife's sister was a couple years younger than her. She wasn't married. Obviously, she was a member of the House of David at some point, and she took a test, and anyway, something went wrong, and there was a false positive. And I think my wife discussed the matter with her with her sister and determined, oh, I think you got a false positive because there was a disturbance of the test or something. So, yeah, I mean, it was easy to get a false positive from this test. Okay. Now, back to the story. This is the kind of test that Lois Roden, it was the only kind of test that was available at the time, okay? Obviously, this is a competitive market. For a period of time, this was the technology available for doing pregnancy tests. So you had to do it. Now, what I'm getting at is if a 67-year-old woman, yes, 67 years old, if a 67-year-old woman is taking a pregnancy test in 1983 of this type, it's not a stretch of the imagination to determine that, well, if there was a positive, what's more likely, that a 67-year-old woman has gotten pregnant or that she's gotten a false positive because of some error in the taking of the test? Okay? I'll let my audience, you decide. And then I have another little project maybe for my audience if you want to bother looking it up. Let's see, let me read it here. Years later, Vernon is telling a highly twisted form of this story to someone. I think it is recorded where he claims that he was accused of getting a 67-year-old woman pregnant, emphasizing how hilarious it was that if he did actually do such a thing, it would be a miracle and hardly anything to get upset about. In actuality, there is not a shred of evidence that Lois Roden was ever pregnant. In other words, when I say, I mean a verifiable evidence. Okay? So yeah, see if you can find a reference to a story he was telling somebody. This would have been after the ATF raid, where he was beginning to communicate with members of the press, government officials, whoever, or even it might be on the transcript tapes or the transcripts of the negotiation tapes. Anyway, somewhere there's a record of him telling this story. Okay, but it's highly modified, and it's a story retold in such a way as to make fun of his accusers, right? Because people were mad at him. Oh, you went and got a 67-year-old woman pregnant, you friggin' pervert. And so Vernon's like, boy, wait a minute. If a 67-year-old woman got pregnant, that's a miracle, right? What are you getting mad at me for? And he's laughing like, look at these idiots laughing at me because I got a 67. Oh, well, come on. That's not what we're talking about. Another thing he said at the time, back in 83, is there was some third party who heard of this matter as it was circulating through the group, and it became a scandal, of course, in the Branch Davidian movement. George, of course, knew about it. He would claim for years later, there's actually, I'll link a video in the description to a news report, and they interview George Roden. He says a couple of things. A, that Vernon burned down the administration building, which that's actually 50-50. I can see he might have or he might not have. I don't know. It could go either way. I'm not sure. Or B, that he raped his mother. Well, no, it wasn't rape. No, by Lois Roden's own testimony, it wasn't rape. Okay, so let's not call it that. Well, I want to be fair and accurate here. So, but he was upset, of course. It's his mom. And this is George Roden. This is not a guy known for moderation, to put it mildly. And of course, again, there's mental illness involved. And of course, you can see in the video, in the video, he seems to be rather sane. Which, when I say that George Roden had mental health issues, don't make assumptions. Okay, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that he was running around like woo woo woo. That's. But he did, obviously. If you look into his history later on, there's some tragic events. I think he did kill somebody, but they determined that it was not guilty by reason of insanity, and so he was institutionalized. But anyway, let's move on. But there was an individual who was involved peripherally Okay, and I don't know who it was, but Vernon would tell this story to try to, as a defense to himself, you know, and it would go something like this. He would say, well, there was a guy, you know, who heard this story, and he heard about me and Lois Roden, and he said, well, she's 21, she's over 21, right? And emphasizing that Lois Roden is a grown woman who can make her own decision, which is certainly true, but that's not what this is about. Again, this is deflection. Okay, this isn't about consenting adults agreeing to have intimate relationships here. This is about specific claims, about fulfilling scripture, about babies going to be born and they ended up not being born, and why, and so on. Okay? All right. So, okay, so let's go back to what he says here. All right? Because I'm starting to, this is getting rather long. I don't want to go on too long with this. Because there's going to be another part. There has to be, I think. Okay. Two forms of light. Okay, so two forms of light. So what is he talking about in the quote? Remember, I'll just read it again. There are those who have walked with us in the flesh. They have not been children of light. That's me. Okay, I walked in the flesh. I was not I was not a child of the light, because I left the group, and I ultimately rejected his message. They say they have seen. They have seen, you know, which I did. I said that. Sure, I know what you teach, Vernon. We had arguments about it. He'd call me on the phone. You know, I know this. You don't know anything, David. You're blind. But now you see they have seen nothing. Well, you know, there was a young girl who left the group because she actually was in a dual custody situation. She was 11. And when she went to go visit her father on agreed legal visitation time, there was a trap that was set because he was notified of what was going on. We sprung the trap, and there was a court order issued, restraining order. She was not allowed to go back because we had to have another custody hearing since of this new information that was given to the father of this young girl. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is because the girl's mother is in the group, and she's a believer. She's one of these children of the light here. Children of the light, right? And we're the ones on the outside who have informed the husband, the ex-husband, the father of the young girl, about this situation. And so the mother of the girl would talk to her on the phone during this custody situation, that when it was in limbo. And the girl had initially been told, now she's 11, right? So just remember what we're like. We're in 11. We believe what we're told by adults typically. She had been told by her mother, they don't know anything, right? Now you see, they have seen nothing. I mean, this is literal. Like literally told her daughter, they don't know anything. Okay, these ex-members who are notifying the father of the situation. And, well, but her mother had also told her to gather intel. What's going on? Find out. Well, okay. So the little girl does what her mother says and goes down to listen in on conversations the adults are having, right? And this would be her father, and I think there was a sister involved. There was also maybe a wife, and they're talking about this situation. Because the little girl knows what's going on. She's 11. She really knows. She's old enough to know that there are secrets that have to be kept. Okay? Remember, she's living at New Mount Carmel. She is friends with Sherry Doyle and all these other young girls there. Okay? So she knows things, and it's a burden that she has to bear, which is probably causing a lot of stress. So she listens in on the conversation, and she finds out from the conversation we know everything. We know everything precisely and exactly. Of course we do. Right? Because we live in reality. The darkness, as Vernon calls it here, right? Whatever. Darkness. And she talks to her mother again, she's like panicking. They know everything, Mom, and upset. And the mother has to talk her down and then try to pull her back into the, she says, C-U-H, C-U-H, over and over again. The father is listening on the conversation. He doesn't know what it means. He has to ask us, what is C-U-H? Come up hither. Yeah, go up to the heavenly places, basically the place where the light is. Come off of this world of reality and darkness and go up to the light, in this place of truth that David Koresh is talking about here, right? Where you see things as they really are. Well, the thing about being 11 is that you haven't really developed these sophisticated cognitive dissonance capabilities that adults have, right? You're kind of in transition. So, yeah, she's kind of seeing things the way they really are. Her mother is much more sophisticated and dwells in this heavenly realm where she can, be one of the children of light here. Anyway, so that's what's going on here. Okay? That's why I told that story. This is the dichotomy. Right? You have the children of darkness, that's us and our horrible people who try to save young girls from being sexually abused. And then there's the children of light, which is, the mother. And this is, I'm sorry, but this is the way that it was. It's a dark story. I don't like it. But it is what it is. And the children of light are up in heavenly places, and they are knowing the truth. So, okay, so in this Isaiah 8 thing, okay, now I need to go into more of the Bible aspect of it. So we're going to do a detailed explanation of specifically Isaiah 8 in terms of the Bible verses involved and where David Koresh got the idea with Zechariah and the son of Berechiah and all of that. So that's the part 3. This will be the final part of my presentation today. Okay. So the key to understanding what David Koresh is teaching about Isaiah 8 is in the witnesses that are brought in to record, right? The text says, I called in Uriah the priest and Zechariah son of Berechiah as reliable witnesses for me. That's for Isaiah. Okay? All right. Now, probably some of you are like thinking, well, this must have been something that actually happened in Isaiah's day, and you would be correct according to the text. There really was an Isaiah. There really was a prophetess. Very likely Isaiah's wife. Okay? Doesn't say that she was, but according to the culture of the time, probably. Because, I mean, this is an official thing. It's saying, witnesses. Right? These are members of the court. Uriah the priest. We'll find out more about Uriah the priest. That's a key. We'll get into that. Okay, so, and then Zechariah, son of Berechiah. So these are individuals who are reliable. Okay? It'd be like if you go to a notary republic, right? Notary and to record, somebody who's officially in a position to make a legal record of something. And so, because this is a prophecy, there's this pregnancy takes place. There's a name given to the child, and it goes on, which I don't need to go on here, but it goes on to talk about, well, by the time this child is old enough to do such and such, This is going to happen. Okay, that's why there's a big deal being made about all this. Okay, all right. So I can only assume, because again, I don't remember specifically, but I do remember studies. Obviously, in this particular case, we have what is called, and I've discussed this before, a type-antitype situation. So the type is the original historical occurrence, which what I just described, and then the antitype is, in modern times, here's what's happening. So the prophetess is Lois Roden, Isaiah is Vernon, and reliable witnesses are the people, me, other people around, witnessing this. When Lois Roden stands up and she describes what happened, we're the reliable witnesses. But there's two kinds of reliable witnesses, okay? There's Uriah the priest, and there's Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah, okay? That's the key. Okay, well, let's read about Uriah the priest. So I'm going to read this here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read this from the NIV because it's going to make it easier on myself. You know, I like the KJV, but sometimes it's a bit, you know, let's just read in modern English here. So this is 2 Kings 16, verse 6. At that time, Rezin, king of Aram, recovered Elath for Aram by driving out the people of Judah. Edomites then moved into Elath and have lived there to this day. Okay, so we have some political maneuverings going on. We have some resettling and the things that are happening biblically in ancient times. The Assyrians are involved. Ahaz, so that's the king of Judah. That's Isaiah's king. Okay, it's also Uriah the priest's king. Uriah the priest, the one mentioned here that I just said, he's one of the reliable witnesses. Ahaz sent messengers to say to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, I am your servant and vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram. Okay, so I just read in the previous verse. The king of Aram is raising hell, running around, causing trouble. The king of Judah, Isaiah's king, Uriah the priest's king, is crying out to the king of Assyria, would you please help me with these guys? Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram and of the king of Israel who are attacking me. What's going on here? Quick Bible lesson. There were originally 12 tribes, split into 10 and 2. Judah is the southern 2 tribes, 10 tribes north. 10 tribe Israel north is in alliance with Aram, and they're working together to attack Judah. That's called the Confederacy. That's bad. According to Judah in the south, little 2 tribe Judah, the leftover, they're being picked on. Okay. By their big brother, Israel. And Ahaz took the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal palace and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. Okay, so politically, this is normal. I mean, obviously, if you need this king of Assyria to do something for you, well, you got to pay him. It's not free. Religiously, this is really bad. Ahaz has wickedly taken, basically violated the temple. So religious people at the time are going to be like, you know, I don't give a crap about Assyria or anything. All I care about is you've violated the temple. Okay, so you got to think about this from a political and religious point of view. All right. The king of Assyria complied by attacking Damascus. That's the capital of Aram. That's actually also, we would call it Syria, by the way. Damascus, Syria. He deported its inhabitants to Kir and put Rezin to death. That's the king. So, okay, there you go. You know, King Ahaz, you paid me some money. I'm the king of Assyria. Wabada bing, boom, that takes care of that problem. So the king of Assyria has helped out the king of Judah. Okay, so here's we're getting down to to the point I want to make here about Uriah the priest. He's one of the witnesses, right, to this child, this creation of this child, Maher Shalal Hashbaz, between Isaiah and the prophetess, which is Lois Roden Vernon. Okay. Then King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. You know, hey, I'm going to go meet the king of Assyria and we're going to hang out. He saw an altar in Damascus and sent to Uriah the priest a sketch of the altar with detailed plans for its construction. You know, King Ahaz sees this altar. Now remember, this is a foreign country, okay? So this altar is not going to be essentially approved by the Judean priesthood, right? Like, this is some other foreign altar. This is, this is a no-no. I mean, it doesn't say that, but that's, you know. So Uriah the priest built an altar in accordance with all the plans that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus and finished it before King Ahaz returned. Okay? Now, Uriah is a priest. Okay, so he works in the temple of the Lord, but he's been given instructions by King Ahaz. You know, hey, Uriah, here's some plans for this really weird altar that I saw. It's really cool. You know, it's got some really whatever, right? Build this thing. Uriah's like, yes, sir. And puts it right down. He puts it down in the temple. Okay? Now, politically, well, yeah. What's he supposed to do? Like, the king told me to do something. I'm Uriah the priest. I'm going to do it, right? Oh, and this is Vernon's presentation here. But he didn't stand up for the Lord. Okay? In other words, he fell into the sin of, just because I'm told to do something wicked, and I do it anyway. I'll build this strange altar, stick it down, stick it down into next to the altar of the Lord. It says, when the king came back from Damascus and saw the altar, he approached it and presented offerings on it. Okay? So, and then it goes on to say, he tells, I won't read the rest in detail, but basically this altar now becomes part of the religious services that Uriah the priest is conducting. So now, okay, so Uriah has, according to the letter of the law, in this world, done everything the way he's supposed to do, but actually he's violated his oath as a priest to keep the commandments of God. He's brought in a foreign altar, obeyed the word of man, a king, not God, and has involved himself in the world, in the ways of the world, the sin of the world, all of that. Okay, so that's Uriah the priest. So the point is that Uriah the priest is not ultimately a reliable witness. It says he's reliable, but he's only reliable in the ways of the flesh, the things of the world. He doesn't have spiritual insight. Okay, so I think you know where I'm going. If the category of people seeing Lois Roden and Vernon, they know what's going on here, but we're just, you're like, oh, how horrible, what a pervert. He's had relations with this woman, and and it's just disgusting. And of course, all that kind of talk went around in the group. Well, that's, you guys are all like Uriah the priest. That's what Vernon would say. This is his argument. Now, so what about Zechariah, the son of Jeberechiah? Well, okay, so he's the other witness, right? Okay. Well, okay, so here we have a little bit of a chronological thing going on. Isaiah's doing his stuff back in the 8th, 7th century. Or maybe 9th, 8th century. A long time ago. Okay, now there's a book called Zechariah, right? And I'm just reading Zechariah 1. Okay. There's an entire book of the Bible called Zechariah. Zechariah was a guy who was involved in the restoration. After, if you know your Bible history, we were talking about Isaiah. He's way back in earlier Bible history. There's other kings that come. There's a Babylonian captivity that happens. And then there's a return from captivity. So this is a few hundred years later. And then we have a Zechariah. And it says, in the 8th month of the 2nd year of Darius, so that's a Persian guy. Okay, the Babylonians are gone. The word of the Lord came to the prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, son of Iddo. Okay, so Zechariah is the son of Berechiah. I don't know if you caught it. The Zechariah in Isaiah 8 is Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. And then it doesn't go on to say he's the son of Iddo. This one in Zechariah 1:1 says Zechariah son of Berechiah, son of Iddo. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this, but for the purposes of Vernon Howell and the connection he makes between Isaiah 8 and Zechariah 1, close enough. Okay? Yeah. Jeberechiah, Berechiah, what's the difference? Okay, yeah, okay. I'm just trying to mirror his thinking, right? I think one time he said that the JE prefix had a certain meaning. In fact, I know he did. I heard him. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. I don't want to get into that right now. Anyway, he's saying in his study that Zechariah, the son of Jeberechiah, son of Berechiah, is the same person in Zechariah 1:1 as the reliable witness. Now, Zechariah, if you read Zechariah, there is a vision of Zechariah where he sees the golden candlesticks. I'll put up a chart that we used to give studies from. And this is about the spirit of prophecy. Okay? This is the truth here. This is the spiritual eyesight that Zechariah understood. And this is seeing things in heavenly places. So those who are of the kind of witness that Zechariah is are the ones that can really see the true spiritual meaning. And they're the ones, I suppose, ultimately like me, I guess, because like I said, I heard Lois Roden get up and I heard her give her testimony, but then I didn't say, well, yeah, screw you, Vernon, I'm out of here. I didn't do that. Now, maybe I should have, but I didn't. I was young and foolish and inexperienced, and even Vernon used to tell me that. Yeah, I was inexperienced, definitely. So I stayed, and I must have become somebody like Zechariah. You know, I'm looking and seeing the spiritual aspect of this. Oh, yes. You know, ooh, Lois Roden and Vernon, and oh, yeah, I get it. You know, very spiritual. Okay, I mean, being a bit sarcastic, obviously, but I mean, that's where you have to go. Okay, so to conclude, so you see what David Koresh is doing with Isaiah 8 and these different things is it is an explanatory mechanism, a narrative to deflect criticism. Okay, and he used this, you know, you saw him use it in 1987, the clip I played there, and then you saw him use it again in 1989 when he was talking about the rebels of the group, me, Mark Bro, other Australians who left the group. We are in opposition. He's using it to illustrate the difference between the two types of people who are seeing the things that he's teaching and doing, but yet we have two different reactions, right? So when he's talking to those people in South Carolina and they're arguing about the voice and everything, they're arguing about, you know, how do you know what you're saying is truth, and how do you know it's really God? Well, for David Koresh, that's not the issue. He knows what he's saying is from God. He says that earlier in that study. We'll talk about that some other day. The point is it's Isaiah 8. It's not what I'm saying. I know what I'm saying from God. How are you going to react to it? Are you going to be like Uriah the priest and go see the flesh and the darkness and the negativity in it? Or are you going to be like Zechariah, the son of Berechiah or Jeberechiah, and see the Spirit, and see the truth, and to see the light, and to go up in heavenly places? Who are you going to be? Okay? And that's where I'll stop for today. because I've gone on long enough. And maybe now you understand a bit better about how David Koresh thought, specifically in regards to his teaching and understanding of Isaiah 8. Please put any questions in the comments. I know this is complicated stuff, and I'll see how I can do to answer any specific questions. So I hope we understand a bit better. So as I said, we have to have a part 3. This has gone on just to explain the Isaiah 8 thing. This is exhausting, I know. It takes a long time to really get deep into this. Very few people have the patience for this kind of stuff. So if you're still listening, you're a trooper, let me tell you. This stuff is very... Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope I've been able to help everybody understand a bit better. Till next time, part 3.